Are you ready, David? Yes. When Some Clergy Went Underground by David Evans and Carol Kammen.
Of course not. It wasn't planned. It was 1968 and I was only 19 years old. I asked about, carefully, you understand. It turned out that someone Stephen knew, had heard of. He's supposed to be trustworthy. You won't believe this. It was a local minister, a Baptist minister.
There were several local women who over a 2-year period had interviewed representatives of social and health agencies, colleges, minors, and unmarried women, and found no community agency offered a family planning educational program.
We also contacted Planned Parenthood for world population information on the advantages and obligations of affiliation with a national organization. We became convinced of the need for a family planning agency in our county and set up a steering committee.
I was asked to be a member of that first board of directors and to chair the Clergy Advisory Committee.
A minute, please. I need to give you some context. All this was happening in Tompkins County in the late 1960s, when any number of medically related services were being founded, along with some social services entities and lots of cultural organizations. We were afloat with organizational energy, mostly designed to step into places where government or current medical care did not venture. As the county population expanded, people came into the area seeking expertise and comfort that was not then available to them. So displaced homemakers, the Racker Center, theaters too numerous to name, but resulting in several solid companies today sprung to life. The CCO, the Ithaca Brass Band, several dance companies, suicide prevention, hospicare, cancer care groups, they all sprouted up as daffodils do in spring. Oh, and that doesn't turn. This was, of course, not the first crop for Tompkins County had been part of the burned over district, that flowering of religious and perfectionist organizations that appeared in the second quarter of the 19th century. Educational reform and prison reform, temperance societies, communitarian, utopian communities, and religious sects. They all grew here, flaring up, dying down, and flaring up again, like prairie fires that seem to be out and then spring to life again. Central New York burned with ideas, some lasting, others quite loony, that faded away. So was the 1960s and 70s in Tompkins County, a time of ferment. It is what made the county what it has become. It stands out. History, you know, always has something to say to attempt to explain events. So I say, your historian.
In April 1968, Planned Parenthood opened an office in space donated by the First Presbyterian Church, later expanded into First Baptist. Not long after, a couple seeking an abortion knocked on the door.
Abortion was illegal. Planned Parenthood was in no position to offer help at the time, so inquiries were directed to me as chair of the Clergy Advisory Committee. Within a couple of weeks, we began to have visitors looking for information about abortion. I have to admit that for the first young couple, university students, I was less than an effective counselor.
We need help and don't know where to turn.
I found myself trying to talk them out of wanting an abortion. I was not really listening. Still, having been open about abortion as a choice and the need to change the law, this was the first time in my professional life to be confronted by persons actually wanting an abortion. Some deep-seated, subconscious, repugnant feelings emerged.
We can't have a baby. We're not ready. I'm only 19.
Then it occurred to me. I said, Dave, what you are doing is not your prerogative. Then the grace and mercy of God began to flow within me.
My boyfriend needs to finish his degree.
I knew that the Judson Memorial Baptist Church in Greenwich Village offered a clergy consultation service on abortion. So I called my friend Howard Moody to ask if he could be helpful to the couple.
The pastor in New York City gave Reverend Evans information, and we went forward.
Over the next month or so, I was able to refer persons to New York City about one a week. Then a call came one day, ding, ding, ding.
David, it's Howard Moody here. We have so many people in the city asking for help. We can't accept anyone outside the metropolitan area.
So what can we do? The need is so much greater than I ever imagined.
How about starting an upstate service?
I knew I had to do something locally. So 7 religious workers in Ithaca, Protestant and Roman Catholic, formed the Upstate Clergy Consultation Service on Problem Pregnancies. We soon became a group of 13, and we referred women who chose abortion to qualified, licensed physicians. In time, our load became so heavy, we organized satellites in Buffalo, Rochester, Syracuse, Utica, and Albany.
We chose to be a service on problem pregnancies rather than abortion. We wanted to communicate that we were open to options. We wanted as much acceptance as possible.
The term was never questioned.
The telephone number was 607-273-7172. Women would call that number and hear a taped message made by a woman, the Secretary of First Baptist, indicating the name and phone number of clergy on call in their area. A new message was taped every Thursday night. The answering machine was in the office at First Baptist.
All this was totally illegal at the time. Everyone needed to be careful. While willing, no one wanted to go to jail. It was much like the abolitionists of the mid-19th century. Most of them wanted to act, but getting caught would have placed themselves and their families in grave danger. Both were very much undercover activities.
We were still underground, but it was becoming evident that the risk of exposure was increasing. The service was needed and wanted. We understood that in going public, we should not mention First Baptist or the church's other than usual ministry.
Wanting to avoid as much fallout as possible, the answering machine was moved to the basement of the secretary's home.
Protestants of several denominations, Roman Catholics, 1 priest, 2 sisters, and 1 Jew were members of the service. Denominational relationships of the coordinators, very strategic persons, were Unitarian in Buffalo and Rochester, and American Baptist in Syracuse, Utica, Albany, and Ithaca. First Baptist's secretary was a Rockefeller Republican and former chair of the County Republican Committee. She was politically astute, a mother, grandmother, and friend of many. She was compassionate towards persons with problem pregnancies, and especially those she knew who had tragic abortions.
As the consultation service expanded, more women sought services.
I found it necessary to reduce my consulting load to devote time to securing doctors for Ithaca and the satellites. This involved travel. Unless it could be a therapeutic abortion, we did not ever refer women to physicians in New York, for under state law, it was a criminal offense to perform, prescribe, or submit to an abortion unless it was necessary to preserve the life of the mother.
It was also a criminal offense to manufacture, give, or sell an instrument, medicine, or drug with the intent that it could be used in obtaining an abortion. 42 other states had similar laws.
Because the law was strict with physicians and women who submitted to abortion, legal counsel advised that we cross state lines to confuse the issue for the states. The National Clergy Network made it possible to recommend physicians in their areas. We also needed to be concerned for ourselves.
Then, as now, each state had its own laws, mostly spurred on by the dreaded Anthony Comstock, who pushed for information about abortion not to be allowed to pass through the U.S. mail.
It was a misdemeanor to give advice to women pregnant fewer than 26 weeks, and a felony for pregnancies 26 weeks and over. The State Penal Code of Criminal Facilitation made it a Class A misdemeanor for
A person who intends to commit a crime engages in conduct which provides such person with the means or opportunity for the commission thereof, and which in fact aids such person to commit a felony.
We did not advise, we did not admit to doing anything illegal. We were counseled that persons who arrange for another to commit a crime endanger themselves under the criminal facilitation section. We did not arrange, but we did give information. We clergy, adept at interpretation and innuendos of words in the theological world, needed help in courts of law. However, there were no charges ever pressed or that went to trial. Incidentally, we had an understanding that if one clergy was arrested in jail, all of us would be there. Suffice it is to say, we believed that what we were doing outside the law was less immoral than the law itself.
David Evans went off to meet the physicians to be sure they were in good standing, and the National Network exchanged information about physicians. There were some guidelines.
Physicians would not perform an operation if the woman was more than 12 weeks pregnant. A doctor in Puerto Rico limited it to 8 weeks. Physicians in England and Japan, where abortion was legal, were willing to operate up to 26 months.
Weeks.
Months?
Weeks.
Typo. Physicians' fees would not exceed $350.
Equal to $3,569.01 today.
And some were less. Physicians were to have security systems in place, including entrances to offices and overnight accommodations.
David would case the joint, so to speak.
I did so to be sure that I would feel secure and to be able to describe the layout to others. Another stipulation was that there was no commission or remuneration from physicians to clergy. Clergy were not to accept financial contributions from consultants either. Contributions were used as discretionary funds to help women unable to pay for the full doctor's fee or travel expenses. This fund was administered by non-clergy living in Ithaca, and clergy made a monthly contribution to the fund in order to pay telephone bills as well as travel expenses.
I called the number 607-273-7172. I had to get a certificate from my doctor confirming that I was pregnant, and then a voice on the phone gave me information as to how to communicate with a physician.
If the woman seemed ambivalent, no information was given, as such women might or might not return. Some women were referred to an approved home for unmarried women.
Most unmarried women did not want their parents to know, and most parents were unaware. Couples often opted to go to England rather than to another state.
There was one dreadful instance. A woman opted to go to Puerto Rico, got a taxi from the airport, but was lured away from the address she had been given and was assaulted and had a botched abortion. When she returned to her campus, the medical director there wanted to call in the district attorney, but after a number of clergy called and talked to him about the consequences for the young woman, her family, and the consultation services, he decided not to go to the authorities. After that, each woman had to have a traveling companion. That was the closest we came to the district attorney walking across the county parking lot to First Baptist.
I was told not to eat or drink for 8 hours before my appointment, and not to talk to other women in the doctor's office as to why they were there. I was to remain at least 2 hours after the operation. All went well, and I went back to my classes the next Monday.
There are records of the women we helped, of the couples we aided. Female, 17, high school junior, Catholic. Male, 16, high school junior, Catholic.
Female 19, engaged college student, Protestant. Male 23, engaged college student, Catholic.
Female, 18, nurse's aide, divorced with 2 children, 5 and 7, Protestant. Male 29, auto body shop worker, single, Catholic.
Female 20, unemployed, Catholic. Male 23, student, married, no religious preference.
Female 21, student, Black Muslim. Male 19, student, Christian Scientist.
Female 21, student, Protestant. Male 26, teacher, Protestant. When told of her pregnancy, he disappeared.
Female 20, student, Catholic. Male 21, student, Catholic. They chose to marry.
Female 27, homemaker, divorced, Protestant. Male 29, employed, married.
Female 37, homemaker, married, Catholic. Male 40, employed, married, Catholic.
Female 23, employed, single, Protestant. Male 23, employed, single.
Certainly Jewish women also became pregnant, but there was not generally the same need for secrecy from family. Jewish law only considers the fetus a person at birth. Life does not begin at conception under Jewish law. Sources in the Talmud note that the fetus is mere water before 40 days of gestation. Following this period, the fetus is considered a physical part of the pregnant individual's body, not yet having a life of its own or independent rights. The fetus is not viewed as separate from the parent's body until birth begins and the first breath of oxygen into the lungs allows the soul to enter the body.
Woman 20, student. She had been raped. We heard afterwards from many of those we helped.
When I woke in the morning, I felt peace, not guilt. No guilt. I knew I was all right, but most of all, my fears were gone. I returned home with this joy of knowing I would make it.
One of the best physicians we work with, who gave his patients time after the operation to talk about their feelings,
Was a large black man with an enormous afro. He came to regional clergy meetings to explain the operation, and he would return as improvements in technique became possible. Not all doctors could meet this humane standard.
While aiding patients and making arrangements for operations, there was a second drama taking place.
On February 2nd, 1970, there was a front-page article in the Ithaca Journal that asked the question, "Want counseling on a problem pregnancy?" The article continued that an announcement had been made that morning by a group of 60 upstate New York clergymen of many denominations of formation of the upstate New York Clergy Consultation Service on problem pregnancies with 6 units, including one centered in Ithaca. The state coordinator and spokesman, Reverend David Evans, pastor of the First Baptist Church, Evans stated,
The needs of women are paramount. We are concerned that women who want to have an abortion have a safe abortion.
The news release was like a lightning bolt, and throughout upstate New York, more than 60 clergy men and women went public with their underground activities. We wanted women whose pregnancy was problematic to them to receive a safe medical abortion by a licensed physician. Others joined our work. Our ultimate goal, however, was repeal of the existing punitive state statute. The Groundhog Day of 1970, we stuck our heads out of the ground and risked whatever the future was to bring.
We knew that what we were doing was essential for individual lives, but that the law needed to be changed. I contacted our state assemblywoman, Constance Cook, to come to a meeting. She later recalled,
A woman friend told me she was going to England to accompany a woman to have an abortion. She said, well, you should know what I'm doing. That was the first I realized that the clergy consultation service was operating right here in Tompkins County. Mr. Evans came to see me. He said he wanted me to meet with a group of clergymen in the area. He didn't tell me what it was about, but I could tell by the way he made the appointment that he wanted a firm commitment from me. That is not always easy for a legislator, but because he was being fussy, I realized that it was important, and I went. When I walked into the meeting room in the Baptist church, there were probably 20 or 25 people there, most of whom were clergy of all different sects, Protestant, Catholic, Jewish, male and female. They came from as far as Buffalo and from all over the upstate area. It was obviously the Upstate Clergy Consultation Group. They told me what they were doing. They didn't introduce themselves, but wanted me to continue to push the abortion bill. They wanted to know what they could do to help. Well, this was just the greatest thing in the world because it was exactly what we needed.
David Evans was born in 1928 in a small town in Wales and came through Ellis Island to the United States as an infant. David met his wife Grace at church in Lincoln, Nebraska, and they married in 1952. Reverend Evans was an undergraduate of Nebraska Wesleyan University and received graduate degrees from Colgate Rochester Divinity School and Union Theological Seminary. He served as pastor of First Baptist in Ithaca from 1966 to 1994. The words spoken here by our David Evans are those that the Reverend David Evans wrote. The woman at the end of the phone was his wife, Grace Evans, who died in 2019.
At a memorial service held on April 15th, 2023, David was described as someone with heart, someone who made and crossed bridges, a man who loved all music and especially good food. Mostly David Evans honored people's stories. The work that began as the clergy consultation service for troubled pregnancies is today carried on legally and with sound medical outcomes in New York as Planned Parenthood clinics and in hospitals.
We honor the work of Reverend David Evans and his story and that of others, men and women together, who made the clergy consultation service for troubled pregnancies possible. We recognize that change can only come by working together, people of good faith, to bring about a world of fairness and equality. To us today, who have lived through those years when abortion was illegal and difficult to manage and expensive, the meanness of our own times is unimaginable. That people want to legislate for all women in any circumstance can only cause harm, all of us harm. We cannot, must not go back on this promise to women that each is able to determine the trajectory of her own life. In 1998, with abortion in the country legal, and there were medical professionals to provide services, Reverend Evans said,
I personally believe that abortion will never again be illegal as we have known it to be in the past. The public will not allow it, including the 8,000 plus women who passed through the upstate New York clergy consultation service.
Yet here we are again.
So, Laura's asked if she can say a word in response. So it's a good place to start.
Yesterday afternoon, I received an email from Debbie asking if I'd be willing to play a role in this piece without knowing the topic, and I just said yes. I'm sitting here before you as someone who is blessed to have received a safe and legal abortion from Planned Parenthood in my college years in Ann Arbor. So I'm very grateful for the opportunity to say that aloud, and that line, no guilt, is exactly how I felt. I was just grateful that I had a mother who struggled ethically with the decision and stood right by me through the whole thing, despite her challenges. And it was safe, and it allowed me to unfold my life to come to graduate school and be the person I am today. So I'm very grateful for everyone who's been part of this legal effort, and that we continue to do the work today. And thank you, Carol, for your beautiful words.
I'm checking the time, and we have opportunity. It's just 12:07, so we have some time.
Couple minutes.
If others would like to share a response, I'm glad to. David, we could get the handheld microphone maybe and run it around here. And especially, Judd Kilgore is here, Dr. Judd Kilgore, who was a part of this. Woo-hoo! Judd, stay right there. Stay there. He's bringing you a microphone.
I just cannot keep my mouth shut about this topic, not only because I always like to talk, but because Carol Kammen is a good friend, and because David and Grace Evans were among the most wonderful people that I ever had the joy of knowing, and because my wife Suzanne was one of the first nurses that was in a Planned Parenthood clinic that did abortions, and she came to this church in the basement to do some clergy work. And she met David, and she said to me, "I think you'd like David Evans. Why don't we get together?" And the short story is we got together, and we really liked each other. And the four of us, the two couples, said, "Why don't we get our kids together?" And that sometimes is a kiss of death. But our kids and the Evans kids became best friends, and it's still going on to this day. Going from the personal to the confessional, David was so sure that this issue was settled, and I think that what we're all seeing now is, no, it's not settled. It's even worse than it was then, because there are so many states that have been under the guide of, I hate to use the word Republican, but they have been under the guide of Republicans, and I know church and state should be separated, so I'm not going to say much more. But it is harder now with states having the ability not only to prevent abortions, but to prevent the use of birth control pills and the abortion pills. And by the way, most abortions are actually done with the pill now, which was not available at the time this clergy service was started. So I just want to shut up shortly, but say this has been a wonderful experience. Thanks to Carol, and thanks to our wonderful cast here, and thank you for the opportunity of letting me say more than I probably should have said.
Thank you. I was so moved. I'm still crying. Thank you, Carol. That was beautiful. I'm here with other members of End Abortion Stigma, which Carol's a member of. I had a legal abortion in New Jersey in 1965. I'm lucky also. I was a medical doctor. I survived. I thrived. But because it was illegal, I did not wake up feeling fine. It took me years to get over the stigma and the shame, mostly because it was illegal. Also, this was beautiful. It's so wonderful to hear the history of the clergy consultation service, to know how involved Ithaca was, and to remind everybody that Connie Cook was a Republican.
Yeah.
Wow.
And she
Yeah, she was
decriminalized abortion
amazing.
in New York State in 1970.
Yeah.
And so we want to remind people that, but there are very few Republicans like her anymore. I just have to do this. I made a movie about Connie.
Oh,
So there's a movie called Connie Cook, a documentary. It's been shown a lot. It's being shown again at Ithaca College on Tuesday, April 30th at 4 o'clock in Williams 225, and the public is invited. So if you'd like to see it, it will be shown again. Unfortunately, we don't have much about the Ithaca, about the Upstate Clergy Consultation Center in it, and I think that was an opportunity I missed. But anyway, thank you. It's very, very moving, and thank you, Carol. It's beautiful.
Hi, thank you so much. It's so wonderful to hear this performed. I've read the play, but to hear it performed is even more profound. I want to invite everyone on April 29th, 7 o'clock in the evening. Another performance of this reading will be happening at the Unitarian Church in the sanctuary. And after the reading, we will have Reverend Richard Gilbert, who was our minister at the Unitarian Church at that time and a colleague of David Evans in the Clergy Consultation Service, who will be speaking about his experiences talking to the board, the congregation, and about what it was like for him then. And we're really thrilled to have him come and join us. So we're hoping that some of you will join us for that. Thank you.
Yeah, why don't we have those, either pass them out now, there's some flyers about the event on the 29th, and we could also have them at the back if people are leaving. Anybody else, comments or?
When I met with Carolyn Cox a long time ago about this reading, I was reminded of when my sister was in college in the 1950s. A girl in her dorm had checked out to go home for the weekend. And when she didn't come back, the college called her family and they said she didn't come home. And they checked in her room and she had given herself an abortion with knitting needles and bled out during the weekend. Oh, God. I never forgot that story. And even in the 70s when I was in Missouri, and this was a big topic, and I was pretty much alone in League of Women Voters believing that abortion was a woman's right. I never gave that story up.
Well, my brother Trevor and sister Janelle are online, so I'm so thrilled that they could be here as a part of this. Thank you, Carol, for writing this and for making us aware of his memoir. We know these stories, but I'm so grateful that he wrote them down. And it was lovely to hear you all speak the play. One thing that he did not write about was during that time period, we were all children, and we had a college student who came to live with us because she was pregnant, and she wanted to continue with school, but they would not allow her to live on campus. So she lived with us, and we became quite close with her. But I do remember her going to the hospital and having a baby, she had chosen to give it up for adoption. So that was sad for us, but also a good experience. So anyway, this was very moving. Thank you.
Trevor or Janelle, would either of you like to share anything? If you kind of wave your hand and unmute yourself, David can change the settings so we can hear you.
It's
I
glad
would
to be
say,
here. Yeah, go on, Trev.
that's okay. Um, I'm very happy to be a part of this, and it's bringing back wonderful memories about my dad, who really was an impressive man. Beyond being my dad, he was just a very impressive man and very caring. Um, and so I appreciate honoring him in this way. Thank you, Carol. And I look forward to reading more of the memoir that I'm just now learning about. So I'm excited about that. So, but thank you very much.
I'm just grateful. Bronwyn just shared the story of college student from Ithaca coming to live with us. It was a little confusing at the time, but we just grew to love her. And it just shows that, my dad goes to where the person's at, and just to have the right to make decisions as a woman. I just feel so proud of that. And it's also, the last few years of his life were rough, and it's just wonderful to have these memories of him and his work for social justice in New York, and as well as just he was chair of the Human Rights Commission for fair housing and those kind of things, and then later with the church, the sanctuary movement that he was very involved in, and he risked a lot in his life, and I just being able to remember that today, it just warms my heart and brings me to tears in many ways. Thank you. It's good to be here.
And I would just add one more thing is that I also, as we've been talking about my dad, I've been thinking about my mom, Grace, who was a quiet support, and I know had great influence on my dad, and of course on my sisters and I. So, thank you.
That's what Carol was going to say, was we can't forget Grace.
Can't forget Grace. No.
And I
Yeah.
would say, my little experience with them late in their lives, don't ever overlook Grace. Anyone else?
Yeah, I think I want to speak from a more personal place here. I think that this is really important Ithaca history that's not very known. I mean, I've been a member of the Unitarian Church for 40 years, and a year ago, there was a UUA national organization program about the history of the clergy consultation service. And partway into the program, they had a minister, and I just about fell off my chair that it was Dick Gilbert from our church. I didn't know that. And so I think it's really important Ithaca and New York history that we need to know to keep us inspired, to keeping on with this issue. And from a personal level, being one who experienced an unpleasant and unplanned pregnancy in 1969 and surrendered a baby for adoption, the first thing that came to mind as the tears were rolling down my face was, they did it for us. And I am so eternally grateful.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone else? Oh, sorry.
This may be an idea that won't work, but it would just seem to me that getting a little bit of publicity about this into the local paper or some way that this might be something that would influence the public in this area to do something more. It also may be just a waste of time to even suggest it, but I think this issue is so important, and illegal abortions were not only illegal, sometimes they were very dangerous, causing bad infections, sometimes death. And some of the children that were born were mistreated and ended up with a very bad life. So I don't want to go too much further now, but I really think that there should be some thought about making this more widespread.
Has there been an attempt to pretty widely announce for the thing on the 29th, I think, so. Yeah. Article in the Tompkins Weekly about what's coming on the 29th, so that's good. That's all right, so. You're gonna record it? Yeah, good, okay. And if anybody, David has recorded on Zoom what we just did, so if anybody wants access to that, we'll also have access to that through here, so. I'm aware some folks need to go, so why don't we say, this has been good. It's been good to be together and to remember this very powerful story, and to let us remember the people today being impacted by what is happening in other places and other states right now, dealing with unplanned, problem pregnancies and really having to make tough decisions. So let us remember them and pray for them. Amen.
Amen.